He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content and support us at patreon.com/CryptidClues.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Cryptid Clues. I am your host, Taylor, and today we have a new Encounters episode with special guest Brenna, who will be joining in just a second. Before that, however, a couple of plugs. You can find us on our website, CryptidClues.ca, social media channels, and should you wish to reach us directly, you can do so via CryptidClues@gmail.com. Now, without further ado, thank you, Brenna, for joining me. Really appreciate you taking the time to share this story with us. So by all means, take it away.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So this was ages ago. It was a story more of my parents than mine, but would have been back June 2006 or 7. My family has always been avid campers. We were never, the family that was going to like Palm Springs or Hawaii for vacation. It was always out camping whenever we could. Yeah, pretty much like Easter to Thanksgiving, we were out in the woods somewhere. But yeah, June 2006, we were out in Harrison here in BC, actually in Sasquatch Park, which is hilarious now. But we had just gotten a motorhome. So forever we had been in tents, tent trailers, and this was our first time out with a real motorhome, very fancy. But we went camping, and as a sort of special surprise, my parents decided to take off the Monday, and we were staying an extra night on the Sunday. And there was nobody in the park that whole day. Everybody had kicked off by Sunday, so we were the only ones there, kind of tucked away at the very back of the site, right up against this super hilly mountainous range that just went from there right out into the woods. So that whole day it was super quiet. We didn't hear anyone. We didn't even see like a park ranger come through or anything. It really just felt just us out there. And actually that year there was a fire burn, so we couldn't even have a regular campfire. All we could do was have candles and like those little hurricane lanterns. So we had just put a few of those right in the fire pit, and that was our only light for the night. Um, but yeah, so it was super late. Me and my sister had already gone to bed in the trailer, and it was just my parents sitting outside having a little adult time. And I mean, both my parents, they had been avid campers their whole life. My mom grew up actually in um, deep country of Nova Scotia, very, very rural upbringing. So she is no stranger to things that go bump in the night. She's kind of heard and seen it all. So they would stay out super, super late. Didn't really matter to them who was around, what was going on. They weren't scared of anything. But while they were sitting out there, I think around 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, they heard this like shriek just pierce through the night. And I mean, like I said, my mom's seen and heard everything. She could not put her finger on what the hell that sound was. Nearly human sounding, but far too loud to be coming from a human from how distant it sounded. Um, they just kind of shrugged it off and were going back and forth trying to, decide what they thought it could be, trying to put some logic to it. And then within a couple of minutes, they heard another one coming from the opposite side of them. So they would have been sitting in between what sounded like two conversing creatures. And we had a dog at the time who was very, very chill. She did not get worked up about any people, animals, anything. She was very, very relaxed, never made much of a peep for anything. And by the time that second shriek had come, she started freaking out and she started edging towards the trailer, I think, because she knew my sister and I were in there. She knew something was off. Whatever it was, she was not happy about it. And that concerns my mom because as much as they'd taken her out everywhere, and any kind of, whether it was coyotes, wolves, scratching sounds, she was never ever bothered by anything. But she was extremely worried of whatever was out there going back and forth. And then they heard a third shriek sounding much closer, more behind them. And so at that point, my mom was like, that's it, I'm going inside. Like, that's it, that's all, which was to my dad quite interesting because my mom's not scared of anything out of the woods. She's a natural country woman. And for her to get nervous and worked up and want to go inside, he was like, okay, well, I guess, like, well, I'll probably come in a couple minutes and, or no, he said he'd probably be in about a half hour, and then ended up coming inside within a couple of minutes because he then heard another shriek coming closer again from the opposite side. And that was enough to freak him out. Which also is interesting because my dad is very much a very logical guy and not too into ethereal cryptid things. He's was never like that, and since that day he thinks there's nothing else it could have been. He's like a full-fledged believer now that that was, had to be a Sasquatch, because he's like, that sound could not have come from any sort of animal that would be living in those woods. Yeah, and then we kicked rocks the next day. They couldn't get out there, but my dog the whole night, she would not rest down, which was super unlike her. As soon as we would ever get in the tent trailer, whatever we were camping in, everyone was in. She was out like a light for the whole night. She didn't sleep one wink that whole night.
Wow.
Hmm.
So, how did your mom feel about like Sasquatch and cryptids, everything like that beforehand?
Yeah, I think she, I wouldn't say she was against the idea of it, but I think because she had such a strong upbringing in the woods, she kind of felt like, I've seen everything, I've heard everything. If I was going to come across one, I probably would have come across it by now. So she definitely probably more lenient to believing versus my dad at the time. But after that night, she's same as my dad. There's just no way that that was a regular animal. There's just no chance.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So I like how you said that you were there, everyone else had left the area, and I kind of had
Hmm.
this thought because national parks seem to be like prime for weird things
Yeah.
going on, and sometimes in other countries and such that you have times of the year that there's less people and
Hmm.
maybe they close parts of the park, and I think, okay, maybe, and this is me maybe stretching a little bit,
Hmm.
but maybe these things are smart enough to know, hey, there's not a lot of people around this time. I don't know if they exactly adhere to a Monday, Friday work schedule, but
Yeah.
if they're around an area, especially Harrison, and they may see, hey, people tend to leave around this time,
Hmm.
maybe we'll kind of saunter in. I just think
Yeah,
that's
pop
really
around.
interesting how you said, yeah, everyone was gone except you guys, and then all of a sudden the
Yeah.
action starts happening.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, and for as often as we were camping, and when we were kids, it was much more provincial campgrounds and more kind of set sites versus deep woods camping. So they were definitely always busy sites. So it was very interesting that the one time that there was not even like a park ranger coming around. So it was really just us out there and tucked way out in the back of the site as well, right up against the woods. Um, I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't want to come check things out, if they, especially if they know people are usually here, let's come take a peek when they're not here, see what they're up to. I mean, they're definitely smart, so I can imagine they'd be curious to come take a peek.
Hmm. Did you guys
Hmm.
go back to Harrison after for more camping, or was your mom
Oh
like,
yeah.
that's it? Oh
Oh
yeah, you
no.
guys did.
No, it
Okay.
didn't scare us off. We came back. No, it was a close spot to where we grew up. So yeah, we went straight back. It was actually really funny because as a kid, I was like obsessed with Sasquatch, and it was like this running joke with my family that someday we were gonna come across this creature, whatever it is, or some sort of a being. And anytime we would see like a Sasquatch statue or like be in a store somewhere in those areas, and they always have kind of memorabilia, this and that, they were always poking fun at me. And then now I'm sitting here like, hey, here we go. we finally we got a little touch of him. Now you guys don't think I'm so crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was just in Harrison actually last weekend, and they just set up their new visitor center, and it's a whole new building with a whole new like Sasquatch museum set up, which
Oh,
is really
cool.
cool. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's neat that they just kind of embrace the culture
The
there
lore,
of
yeah.
Sasquatch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, sightings are just so frequent there. It's nuts.
Yeah, it's a hotspot for sure.
Mm-hmm. I think Merritt and then Harrison, you have so much just terrain that
Yeah.
these things probably just trek back and forth
Oh yeah.
between
Well, it's
there.
so dense out there. I mean, no one can really get through there probably but them. So
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. So aside from Sasquatch, how do you feel about cryptids in general? I guess actually, in retrospect, how do you feel about that story when your parents told you about it?
I was gobsmacked that I missed it. Because like I said, I was obsessed with Sasquatch at that time. And the next morning they told us, I was like, you're freaking kidding me. Like I missed about like a half an hour. I could have
Mm-hmm.
had this experience that would have made my whole childhood probably. But I wasn't surprised at all. I was like, I've been telling you guys he's out there. Now here you go. Now you have your
Mm-hmm.
proof.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And are your siblings on board with that too, or is it just
Oh
just
yeah.
you? Oh
No,
yeah.
my sister's in. She's very similar to me in believing of the unknown, and it's very unlikely that we're the only sort of more evolved species out in this way. Whether it is a direct like different avenue of evolution or if there's something more intrinsical going on, whatever it may be. There's definitely so much going on in those woods that we don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
There's just too much unexplored. So to say no is crazy.
Totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. Is there a line that you would draw when it comes to Bigfoot? Because there's a whole variety of different
Hmm.
perspectives. Like, oh, I saw Bigfoot look like the Predator. He literally turned invisible and was jumping from tree to tree. And other people are saying, yeah, they can mind speak. There's so many
Hmm.
different experiences. And do you think I'm not getting into that? That's too much, or are you just open to all of it?
No, I'm pretty much open to anything. I mean, I'm definitely the person that's going to hear out any scenario, any conspiracy or whatever you want to call it. But I think it's definitely possible that there's, more than just quote unquote Bigfoot or Sasquatch that's out there that people are encountering. And who knows what's jumping through different portals or what's hiding out there, and these different encounters could all be different lines of some sort of species or being or humanoid or whatever it is that people are just kind of putting in the box of Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And that can extend to, yeah, so many other different things like
Oh yeah.
aliens and paranormal. So it just goes
Skinwalkers,
on.
all of it.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's quite something.
Hmm.
And so how do you feel about like aliens and other
Oh,
types
they're
of mysterious
100%,
things?
100% out there.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
We're crazy to think there's nothing else going on out there.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Totally.
Yeah, I feel like anyone who doesn't have some sort of a, I hate to say like believing, because I feel like it should be just a known fact that something is going on beyond our world. We're one planet in one solar system in an entire universe. Like a million to one, there's definitely something else going on out there. But I feel like anyone who's not sort of open to that, I mean, you could open a whole can of worms about that, about whether it's a different level of enlightenment, or it's a frequency thing or an energy thing for people who can be receptive of that sort of information or that ideology and that sort of thing, and anyone who can't, they have just baselined, and there's no way that they're going to be able to reach that sort of information where they can just take it in. Because you see some people, you have a conversation with them and it looks like they just go blank and then change the subject because they just can't receive that idea. So it's interesting. I don't know if there's some sort of a connection to people who do believe it and to what is going on out there, if there's some sort of streamline or something going on in the ether, what it is, but there's something.
Mm-hmm. I think
Hmm.
you hit that spot on. Some people are just very closed off, and to each his
Hmm.
own. Everyone is different and on different paths and such. But I think for myself, when it comes to paranormal things, me and my wife will watch different shows and really kind of sometimes get really immersed into it, and you just gotta
Yeah.
pull yourself out like, oh, I gotta close up because I feel like this is just too heavy.
Oh yeah, sure. Because I mean, it can take a toll of you. I feel especially getting into like the paranormal side of things because that is totally all energy based, and I feel like if you maybe give yourself too much to it, it can wear you out mentally, physically, emotionally. It's such a power surge, that whole world. So yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think the end point of having these sort of conversations in your podcast as a whole is just getting conversations going, because if people don't talk about it, even this, where I mean it's really just an audio encounter at the end of the day, it's not like we saw anything or had anything crazy, but even having conversations around it, bringing awareness, that's what brings more people into it, and being more receptive to maybe they did have an encounter that they wrote off, or if they were to come across something like that, if they weren't in sort of a mindset or able to understand other possibilities, write it off there as well. So I think the more we can just have candid conversations and just be open to whatever, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And just because it was an audio experience, I think that it's still very powerful. Those are still
Mhm.
one of the most common experiences out there,
Sure,
aside from
yeah.
finding footprints and whatnot. But you're right that the discussion needs to happen, because if people
Mhm.
aren't sharing these things, then they'll take it to their grave.
Yeah.
And are your parents, do they like to talk about this with their friends,
Oh
or do
yeah.
they kind of like, they do?
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
that's
when it first
perfect.
had, it was
That's
probably
great.
the first, like, with 5 years of the experience. Like anytime we met someone new, or if we're camping and meet a family there, it was always came up, because it was such a crazy thing for them, being like having gone out camping for so many years, like their entire lives, and having encounters with regular animals, bears, coyotes, wolves, cougars, all of this. It was just such a different experience. It felt different. It sounded different. It was nothing that they could pinpoint. So they were hanging on to that story for years. Even now, when we bring it up, it's like, wow, that was crazy. Like my dad, he can't even. My dad's the kind of guy who has an answer for everything. This one, he doesn't. Every time he brings it up, he's like, God, I wish I could have seen it. Like, I just need to know what it was, because I can't think of what it could be. And it's the only time I ever really see him like flabbergasted about anything. Hmm.
Yeah, totally. It's nice that they were both there in that
Yeah.
situation to reaffirm, because there's lots of times when people they detail their encounters, they'll see something and they shut down. They don't know if anyone else saw it,
Yeah.
or
They just try
so
to
to
rationalize
reaffirm.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing how many people really do just shut down. So
Hmm.
it's great that your parents are talking
Oh,
about
yeah.
it and sharing it. It just helps kind of fill in the
Yeah,
gaps.
totally.
I'd be curious. Have you ever heard the Sierra sounds?
The which, sorry?
The Sierra
The
sounds?
Sierra sounds. No, I don't think I'm familiar. I should look it up.
Um, Definitely take a look into it. It's quite something, and play it for your
Let's
parents
see if it's
and
similar.
see if it's similar. Yeah, I'd be very
Yeah.
curious to know.
Cool.
There's a whole bunch of different sounds that these things make. That
Sure.
the gentleman by the name of Ron Moorhead went out to the Sierra Mountains, and they're out there for a while, and they had these recorders, and these things are chattering, making freaky noises and
Wow.
whatnot. Yeah, so if they listen to it and think, boom, that's what I
Yeah.
heard, then you're onto something.
Hey, wouldn't that be cool? That would be like, I'm
Yeah.
rolling nail. That's it.
Yeah. But yeah, that is it. We'll close it there.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Brent. I really appreciate your time making this happen.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I'm glad we could connect about it. And I love talking about this kind of thing. So
Definitely. Anytime. Take care. All right, everyone. That wraps this episode up for this week. Thanks again, Brenna. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Remember, you can find us at CryptidClues.ca, social media channels, X, YouTube, Facebook, and Patreon. And should you wish to reach us directly, CryptidClues@gmail.com. So until next time, everyone, take care and stay safe.